Good morning or good evening, everyone. It's Tuesday night, and tonight with Book Talk, I am so excited to get to introduce you to my friend, Melissa Tagg, who writes some of the best contemporary romance. And what I love about hers is they're usually set in these small towns. A lot of them have been in Iowa, and now they're the series that just started this last week is set in Maine. And so they're small towns, they're great characters, but they're real life, but with sweet kind of rom-com baby goats, all kinds of fun things. So Melissa, would you like to take a moment to introduce yourself?
Sure. You did a fantastic job for me. I'm Melissa. I write contemporary romance. My new book just came out last week. And you mentioned that a lot of my books are set in Iowa, and that's because I live in Iowa. I'm a total Iowa girl. I love it here. And it's fall right now, so I'm exceedingly happy these days.
And fall is one of the best seasons. I don't know. I kind of like them all. I think that's because I'm a Midwest girl where we get all four of them. But there's something about fall and knowing that bonfires are coming and it's football and apple harvest and all those fun things. So what is it about autumn that really just pulls you in? Because you've set this latest book just entirely in autumn. So what is it about autumn that makes it such a perfect season for a romance?
Yeah, I often say that I think I would set every single book in autumn if I could, but for one thing, it's beautiful in the Midwest. I feel bad for people that aren't in the Midwest because we get beautiful trees and pumpkin patches and apple orchards and baby goats, like you said. But I also think, I don't know if this is just me or if this is everybody, but as a kid, autumn to me always felt like change and newness. Like you would get new school supplies and a new backpack. And I mean, that feeling is still with me even now as an adult. And I love setting romances during autumn because I feel like it kind of goes with that sense of change. You're over the hot days of summer. I don't know. I just think it's an incredibly romantic season. So
Yeah. And if you're from the Midwest, like Kate is, um, you probably experienced this in Iowa, where you get all four seasons in the exact same day.
yeah. Oh,
And
that's true. Yep.
yeah, we
And
always say in Indiana or Nebraska, where I'm from, if you don't like the weather, just wait a few hours and it can completely change. But you're right, there is something to the leaves changing color and just that crisp edge to the air that I love. And then we get lots of those delicate wildflowers like,
yeah.
okay, goldenrod. I know most people think of it as a weed, but in Nebraska, it's the state flower.
Yep.
So, and it's just everywhere here in Indiana right now. It's so much fun.
Yep. Even just a drive along the interstate is beautiful in fall. So it's gorgeous.
So
Oh.
you've set this latest book, Autumn by the Sea, in Maine, and that's a departure. A lot of your books have been set in Iowa. What led you to go, okay, it's time for a change of venue. It's time to get a new setting for these contemporary romances.
Yeah, I spent a long time last year trying to write a book called Some Bright Someday. And I mean, I spent 8 to 9 months laboring over that book, and it takes place in Iowa. And in those months, I got more and more creatively frustrated. And thankfully, I finished that book. But in that process, I started thinking, you know what? I think I need a little bit of change in my writing life. I need to do something a little bit different. And as a little girl, I became obsessed with Maine. I don't know why. I think maybe from reading Sarah Plain and Tall, when Sarah's always talking about how wonderful Maine is. So as soon as I started thinking about writing a book set in a new place, I thought it's going to be Maine. It's going to be on the seaside. The funny thing is, I set this on the seaside in Maine, but yet it's a blueberry farm. So I still kind of have that like farming Midwest feel, but yet it takes place on the coast. But yeah, I just needed a little bit of a change. I'm still going to write more Iowa books. I was actually midway through an Iowa series when I started writing this Maine series. So I definitely have unfinished business with my Iowa books that I will get back to. But yeah,
Yeah.
fun to do a change.
Well, and it's so fun because, it really is. It's set in agriculture still, but in a very Maine type setting with the blueberry and berry farm. And so did you get to go to Maine, or is it just from reading books? Like, I think when you say blueberry farm, I think Blueberries for Sal, which is such a great kids book set in Maine with, the bear
Yeah,
and little
yeah.
girls swapping moms and all of that. But did you actually get to go visit the location, or how were you able to create it so realistically?
Right. I have not been to Maine. I wanted to go this fall. I couldn't go this fall, but I hope to next year. I don't know if it's going to count as a research trip since I'm going to be going after I've already written probably the whole series. But I am going to go. But no, how I wrote a blueberry farm, I actually, when I was thinking about Maine, I thought, okay, there's like the lobster industry is what I initially thought of, but I thought, I don't know anything about that. I can't write about lobsters. I don't know anything. So I started researching Maine and realized that actually they're like the biggest exporter ever of blueberries. And I thought, farming, I can do farming. I know about that. But I still had to do a lot of research. I got on a lot of blueberry farm websites and sent emails to people that have like smaller family blueberry farms, and did a bunch of research that way. But it was pretty fun to learn about. It's not the same as farming in Iowa, believe it or not.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always different when you get into those kinds of environments and you have to go, okay, I know a lot about this context of
Mhm.
agriculture or farming or whatever, but it's totally different when it's a fruit farm. Although I think you've done an apple orchard, haven't
Yep.
you?
I've done
Yeah.
an apple orchard, and that was nice because I've got orchards in the vicinity of where I live. So I was just able to go talk to the people there. A little bit easier to do that research. But yeah, there's a scene in this story where the heroine, who is from the Midwest, she goes to Maine, and she's kind of joking with the hero of the book that she never really thought about where blueberries come from and didn't know there was a difference between high bush blueberries, or no, low bush blueberries and high bush cultivated blueberries. And that was basically me speaking as her, saying, I thought I knew about blueberries, and no, I know nothing
Yeah.
anymore
I
now.
think that's half the fun of being a writer, though, is we get to have all these vicarious lives. And I got to tell you, there's a bunch of readers on here who are like, Maine in the fall, yes, please. Just thinking that, all the fruit farming and getting to go see the fall foliage, and just all of that, it would be such a fun excursion. And I think that's something that all of us are just kind of hungry to do
Mhm.
after being stuck more or less in place for 18 months. There's just kind of this pent up demand
Yep.
to go and have new experiences. And so your book is kind of like a vacation between the pages.
Yeah, I hope that's what people's experience is. I hope it feels like a main book and not like an author who has tried to pretend that they know about the state. I hope it feels like a real vacation for people. And it was fun to write a heroine from the Midwest going to Maine and getting to kind of pretend that her first experience seeing the Maine seaside or touring a blueberry farm or walking through this big old yellow farmhouse, pretending that was me doing that. I think that's just the best part. One of the best parts of being an author is getting to pretend that's you as you're writing.
And I think that's when it becomes so real for readers, is when it becomes real for us.
Yeah.
And so the fact that you were interviewing and talking with farmers and learning more about it from their perspective and getting to know the difference between the high and the low picking and all of those different variations, it's like we have to fall in love and really become kind of an expert in the field in order to be able to know what to pick and choose to include in the book. So tell us a little bit about the story, because you've got this farmer, or actually he's kind of farming for someone else, trying to keep the farm afloat. And then you've got someone who's kind of potentially a lost relative. So how did all of those elements come together for you?
Yeah. Well, I knew starting out with the series that I wanted to write about a woman who has lost her granddaughter and doesn't know where, and has spent almost 30 years trying to find her. That was kind of the spark of the story. There's an old Disney movie called Candle Shoe that I grew up watching. And so that little piece of the story, I think, is from having watched that a million times as a kid, because it's about an older woman who has lost her granddaughter. So that piece was the spark at the very beginning. The only other spark that I had was I want to write a hero with a Scottish accent. I don't know why he's Scottish. I don't know why he has an accent. So that the whole storyline kind of developed from those two things. And I came up with this idea of a woman who has adopted children. So she's adopted him from Scotland. And then he's kind of against her looking for her lost granddaughter, because he thinks all these women that have come forward saying I'm the granddaughter are just trying to scam this older woman named Maggie. So he's kind of wary of Sydney when she shows up. Sydney doesn't know anything about her past, and as she kind of tries to figure out who she is, there's a overarching mystery that kind of flows through as part of her search to figure out if she's actually Maggie's granddaughter.
Yeah,
it sounded very confusing, but
no, and that's great. And Linda asked a really important question. What's the name of the book? And it's Autumn by the Sea. And something that those of you who are watching and listening right now need to know is that today is the last day. So Tuesday, October 5th is the last day to get the ebook for $4.99 before the price will go up. So I can tell you that Melissa is one of my favorite contemporary romance authors, because she just writes with a great voice and creates characters and settings, kind of the communities that you want to keep going back to. And so I would definitely hop over to Amazon today and pick it up while it's at the $4.99. In fact, I picked it up. I couldn't remember if I'd pre-ordered it or not. And so then a couple of days ago, I was like, oh, I better go check. And it hadn't downloaded. So I picked it up because $4.99, I mean, that's a coffee at Starbucks anymore. Such a great way to spend some time. So you've been writing for a while and we've been friends. Oh my goodness. Sometimes I have to stop and remind myself, I've actually been writing for quite a while. And so we've been friends, I would say probably for 10 years
at least.
And we're in Grove Girls together. And I've mentioned that because Catherine Ray was on and Beth Vogt, and they were part of the Grove Girls as well. But you're the reason the Grove Girls came to be. I don't know if you knew that.
I did not know that. No.
So yeah, because I mean, it came out of that interaction. Really, we'd kind of met at American Christian Fiction Writers, but then there was the year that you opted to take a mentor appointment with me. And I just remember you sitting down in front of me. And when I saw your name on the list, I was like, she's published. Why does she want to sit down and meet with me? And God just really used that to say that it's important, even as we're on our publishing journey, to still have community and have people who can encourage us and kind of keep us going when the journey gets tough. So how has writing friends, how has that been helpful or a part of your writing journey?
It's been a massive part of my writing journey. I think, when you're a kid and you're dreaming about being a writer, you think I'm going to write a book and I'm going to see my name on a book cover and it's going to be really cool. And you don't realize that once you actually start going to conferences and meeting other authors, that it's actually, it might be your name on a book cover, but it's a community of people that built into your life and invested in you and encouraged you and prayed for you and supported you that made a book possible. I can tell you why I met with you at that conference. I remember thinking, Cara Putman, this is somebody who not only is an incredible writer, but she also has a full-time job and she's well loved. And I just want to be like her. So I just wanted to sit down and talk to somebody who I looked at as somebody who was living out your writing career, your faith walk, your life, as somebody that I wanted to emulate. And then, man, I was so glad we did meet, because I was right in between books right then. My first book, I think, had come out by that point, but I was like dying trying to write my second book. Just didn't know what I was doing and was so worried that the whole thing had been a fluke. And I just remember you praying with me and thinking, it's going to be okay. Like, it's going to be okay. So yeah, I think that's what writing friends do for you, is they help you see it's going to be okay. So.
Absolutely. And I think that that's so important, because from a reader side, we just see the books coming out every 6 months, 9 months, or a year. And we're like, come on, write faster. And on the writing side, sometimes we don't actually acknowledge that it's a challenge to come up with fresh ideas. And sometimes we'll in like the general world, we'll talk about imposter syndrome. But I know for me, that was a real part of my journey because it all came really kind of fast. When I started writing, my first ACFW conference was like 5 months after I started going, okay, I'm going to try and write for publication. And then it was that next one where I got my first contract.
Oh my goodness, that's amazing.
And yeah, I mean, it was crazy. It's not the way it's supposed to happen. But I remember getting the contract because it was when they still announced them and Barbara would call you up and the whole 9 yards. And Liz Curtis Higgs was the keynote speaker. And I remember walking out of all of that and going, they're going to figure out that they gave the contract to the wrong person. And I remember going to the prayer room at ACFW and just being like, oh my gosh, this should be the most exciting day of my life. And I am terrified that they're going to figure out it's the wrong person. Mm-hmm. And then you've got to come up with the next idea. And you're trying to write a book while editing a book, while marketing a book, and coming up with the next idea 2 books down. And it's a lot.
It is. Plus you're juggling, reviews and getting used to people saying things about your book and, just kind of
all of that.
The comparison that comes along with it. So yeah, it is. It's a lot more than writing the book. I'm grateful for every step in every piece of it. But yeah, I would say that I was naive a little bit to some of what comes along with publishing. But at the same time, it's an incredible gift. And yeah, so.
Well, and Linda left a comment that she loves how authors help each other. And I think that's something that actually makes Christian publishing, at least the ACFW community, and I've seen it in a couple other pockets as well, just so wonderful, is that there is this sense of camaraderie and this sense that we're all in it together. And I don't see it as a zero-sum game, that if you're selling books, then that's taking from the people who could buy my book. Instead, how can we help each other and get more people reading our books in general?
Yep, absolutely. And it's fun to be around people that you're not competing with. We all have the same thing that we absolutely love. We all love fake people in fictional places. We all love imagining and just to get to be friends with people who love that same thing is a huge blessing.
Yeah, it really is. And Joan loved the book. So congratulations. People are getting through it and loving it.
Thank you.
When you think about the relationship between readers and writers, what has been something that readers do that has been so encouraging? Because we all have days as writers on almost the opposite end of, there's the imposter syndrome. They're going to figure out it was a one-time fluke. And then there's the, oh my gosh, no one's ever going to read this. Everybody thinks I'm terrible. Why am I doing this? So what have readers done that has just been encouraging or kept you writing?
Man, I can tell you literally today what readers did. I happened to see a review yesterday that a person that didn't care for the book, and that's totally okay, but that can really deflate you a little bit. Within 24 hours of seeing that and feeling a little discouraged, I think I've had 6 emails from people that have now finished Out of by the Sea, just in that 24-hour time period, telling me what they loved about the book or what it meant to them. And I just thought, thank you, God. You knew exactly what I needed to hear. And people took the time not just to read the book, but to tell me what they liked about it. And man, I don't know if people realize like a 2-line email can be the thing that helps you forget the other thing that you read that you kind of wished you hadn't read. But yeah, just getting to interact with readers. I think a lot of times like, hey, if this was 30, 40, 50 years ago, we wouldn't have this kind of relationship that we get to have with readers now. I don't always love social media, but I do love the part of it that lets me connect with readers. And it's pretty fun when a reader will want to talk about the details of your book, and they'll talk about characters like they're real people too. And to think, oh, I'm not the only one that loves these fake people anymore. Other people love them too. We can talk about them together. I adore that. So yeah, readers can be an incredible voice of encouragement. That is for sure.
That's awesome. And it really does make a difference. And those reviews, recommending a book to someone, I think both of those, and then just saying, hey, I really loved your book. And Goodreads or BookBub, I know I often, as a book is releasing, will go over there and just see, okay, what's the reaction, and leave comments back, because that's so meaningful to me. So Irene asked a question, while we're all still virtual, how can I find critique partners or writing partners? And I know for me, a lot of that came through American Christian Fiction Writers, which is largely an online community with an annual conference and some chapters. But for you, I know it's been ACFW, but it's also been My Book Therapy, right?
Yes. Yeah. Somehow I found out about My Book Therapy very early on when I started writing, and went to a couple of retreats and got involved online there and met some very close writing friends. It was cool because we met online and then we all went to ACFW, and that's where we met in person. And I think that's where we kind of deepened our friendship and were able to become critique partners because we trusted each other. We kind of spoke the same story crafting language from having gone to the same classes or webinars at My Book Therapy and ACFW. So getting involved in online communities, I know it's kind of a bummer sometimes because you want to see people in person, but it's a really great first step to meet a lot of people. And then
Yeah.
if you have the opportunity to go to a retreat or a conference, it just kind of takes it to the next level.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the potentially long-term benefits of the pandemic. I keep looking for
Right.
the silver linings, is we've all gotten more comfortable with Zoom, or, doing kind of that online webinar format, so that then it makes it easier to keep connecting. So Grace is asking, where do you usually get inspiration for your characters?
Oh man, that's a good question. I kind of all over the place. I mean, my inspiration for heroes that I write for my male characters a lot of times is, this is what I would love in a man because I'm single. So it's very easy to just kind of think of it that way. For my heroines, I hate to say this, but I think unintentionally my inspiration is almost always myself, not in a good way, but in whatever I happen to be struggling with in my life at that point, always comes out in a heroine, whether I want it to or not. Um, as far as like maybe the jobs that they have or the unique traits or the interesting backstories, I love to give. Sometimes I spend more time giving a character an interesting backstory than I do their current story. That is just honestly, I think it's the result of reading a lot of books, talking to a lot of people, having a job where I get to interact with a lot of people. It just comes from all over the place, I think.
And that's awesome. And I think that what you talked about with the heroines kind of coming out of what you're growing through, how God's trying to kind of tweak and turn you. I know that's very much me, at the same time. And they're not all like, my friends sometimes they'll email me and they'll be like, or they'll text and they're like, oh, your heroine just did this and I could just see you doing that. And I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, there's often like little quirks or things I kind of pull out of what I like or what I've seen a friend like. But the spiritual threads and like that inner growth, often, even when I don't realize it, God's using, if I'll allow him, the writing of the book to kind of go deeper with me on something. And that's not always a comfortable place to be.
It's not always comfortable when you're writing, and then after the fact, when the book comes out, it can be really vulnerable to think,
Yeah.
oh, that I was just wrestling through that, and now I've kind of wrestled through it publicly through this character. So that's a that's a vulnerable part of writing, I think.
It is. So readers, be gentle, especially with Christian fiction. I think often that really is what's happening. So Cleopatra says that she thinks heroes are easier to craft than heroines, or at least it's easier to write a hero reluctant to fall in love than a heroine being the reluctant one. And I think that's actually kind of fun when you can flip that. And I'm thinking particularly about Flight Risk for me was one of those where it was the heroine who was really resistant to falling in love. And so that was kind of a fun twist on it because she had a life and it was, she was a little lonely, but it was good. And so she had to decide whether she was willing to even open the door to risk love.
Right. Yeah. I like it when you can take a norm or just something that we see often and flip it and do it the other way around.
Yeah. So Anna has a question too. Do you think you might ever write historical fiction?
Oh my goodness, that's such a great question. That historical fiction is my favorite genre to read. I'm a huge bookworm, and historical romance is 100% my jam. So many a times I have wanted to try. I'm scared that my voice doesn't fit historical, but yeah, I have a book that I'm probably since I started writing that has been in the back of my head that's a historical romance that someday I think I'll get brave enough to write. We'll see when. We'll see when I give it a try.
That's awesome. And that's where I think sometimes like you, I love reading historical or I love reading split time. But I've only written World War II, and then I've written the
Right.
legal / romantic
Yep.
suspense. And the amount of research that goes into historical, I really admire people who just jump around and do all the time periods and locations, because it's a lot of work to get the details right.
Yep. Yeah, just to research like a content, like we talked about, researching blueberry farms takes time, but it can't be anything compared to like the research that goes into historical event. And to think like everything from the words they use to the clothes they wear to the kind of house they live in, how they use what transportation. I mean, there's a lot of details. So I definitely admire historical writers. One day I
Yeah.
hope to join their ranks. We'll see if it ever happens.
So give us a recommendation for your go-to authors when it comes to historical and then contemporary.
Okay. Historical, well, your World War II books for sure. Some of my other historical
Thanks.
favorites are Lori Benton. She has a book that I think just came out today. It's called Shiloh. Love Lori Benton. Joanne Bischoff, Rosanna M. White, Laura France. Those are some of my big go-tos. Oh, Amanda Dykes. She actually writes, I think it would be considered split time
Mhm.
or
Yeah.
general fiction, but she has historical elements. So, and actually her most recent one is a World War one. So yeah, she's amazing too. Contemporary, goodness, I just love everybody. I love your books, Cara. I love
Oh,
Courtney
thanks.
Walsh, Susan May Warren, Rachel Hauk, Jenny B. Jones is hilarious.
I know. I love her. If I could write that funny, I would
Yes,
just, her and Pepper Basham, both just the
yes,
kind of
Pepper.
effortless. And then I'm like, yeah, if I'm funny, it's always by mistake.
Yep, yep. Oh, I gotta say two more. Tammy L. Gray. I just went on a binge and read a bunch of her books. They're so good. And Becky Wade, of course, is like
Oh,
incredible. So
yeah.
I could
Becky Wade
listen.
is
I think I could
amazing.
go on forever. So
And you're kind of like me. It's
yeah,
like, I can't just name one. I've got to go through the
I
entire
know.
list
I
because
know.
I just love, I mean, look at my to be read pile there. That's my
Love
to
it.
be read pile, one of them. And that doesn't count all of the books here. It's ridiculous, but so fun.
Yep. Yep.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I hope that everybody enjoyed getting to meet Melissa. And if you haven't read her books yet, you really should start with Autumn by the Sea, which just released last week. It's very new. And it's wonderful. It's set in Maine, but her contemporary romances are just such good books. You will really enjoy them. Thanks so much again for joining us tonight, Melissa.
Thank you. It was a blast. So happy to see you.
Yeah, it's so good to see you too. All right. Thanks, everyone.